video and all other videos on this channel are for entertainment purposes only. The content of this video and all other videos on this channel are the opinions of the creator only and do not constitute legal, trading, investment, or financial advice of any kind. Investing carries a high level of risk and the majority of retail clients lose money. Do not invest any capital unless you understand the risks and you are prepared to lose it all.
Right, hello and welcome to Camel Finance. I'm your boy Camel and welcome to the week. Welcome to Monday. It's finally FOMC week, right? It is finally time to see what kind of nonsense they're going to feed the masses. As it's FOMC week, we'll briefly touch on a bit of inflation, a bit of rate cuts, that kind of thing. I've got a few Bitcoin charts to show you, and then that should be pretty much it, right? Let's not try to pretend like there's much to do at the moment. First things first, this indicator continues to pay for itself, apparently. So thank you to everyone that has helped us out with the feedback. The response continues to be fantastic, and we continue to make this thing better and better week by week. If you haven't got it already, you can try it free at camelfinance.co.uk. As I said, FOMC is today, right? And we know, unless this changes drastically, then we're going to see a 25 basis point cut. It's funny how the rest of the internet's probably still debating this and still arguing over which one of these cuts we're going to get, or is 50 basis points on the table. But the reality is, whenever this number is over 85%, that's what's going to happen. So we can head into this week knowing we're going to see a 25 basis point cut. And we're also going to continue to maintain the expectation that we're going to see no more than another 1, 2, maybe 3 if we're super lucky cuts before the actual top comes in for the likes of Bitcoin, gold, and the stock market. As ever, we'll be open to all possible outcomes, okay? If the market wants to keep rallying into next year, then who am I to doubt that? But the market will need to prove that to me. Otherwise, we're going to continue to stand with our base case and expectations. Before we get into the Bitcoin, and I've even got some altcoin stuff and a bit of silver to talk about today, but before we get into that, I just wanted to point at this fractal because I keep seeing this doing the rounds, and Apollo has just kind of posted it again to the masses. They're saying that they expect this 1970s fractal for inflation to repeat, this kind of double pump into a new high and all of this kind of thing. And I just wanted to take this opportunity to explain why this is the internet's most misguided fractal, okay? Comparing today's inflation to the 70s is lazy and misleading. To do so ignores the fact that the Iranian Revolution of 78 to 79 caused a severe supply shock and sent oil markets into chaos, right? Now, coupled with the Iranian war with Iraq, oil spiked over 150% in a 12-month period, okay? So today, that's nothing like what we've got. Oil continues to steadily decline since our top call back in June of 2022, and it's not done declining yet either, okay? Now, back in the 70s, the Iranian oil output dropped by nearly 5 million barrels per day, which was equivalent to around 7% of global production at the time. And it was this event that caused that double-digit inflation into the early 80s. It's in no way, shape, or form comparable to what we have today. In addition, okay, as I show every single weekend during the weekend's deep dive, under the hood, inflation is at target. The Fed is already late to cut rates, and shelter has been causing this perceived sticky inflation print, but as soon as you substitute shelter, which is a huge lagging component for a more real-time metric like ALNRI, what we see is disinflation continues to persist. The real risk continues to be deflation. And this silly 1970s fractal is deliberately misleading the masses that are too lazy to go and check for themselves. And so, once again, I kind of point at this just to say, I believe we can use this to give us an advantage over the majority of market participants, right? The majority of market participants are going to be positioning for a resumption of inflation. And it's not even on the cards until much later in life, right? The reality is deflation is the risk. We're probably not going to be even in true asset price deflation until next year. They're not even going to start printing until late next year. And remember, this is the other thing. People think like, oh, you print and assets just go to the moon, right? But that's not always the case, right? There's a debasement trade for sure, okay? And assets usually respond well to printing. But that is not the same as inflation. Inflation requires an additional component, velocity, which speaks to how often or how many times money changes hands, okay? And it's this velocity component that, number one, needs to exist for inflation to even manifest. And number two, this is one of the biggest driving factors behind the fact that when you print money, it often doesn't even show up in the CPI for about 12 to 18 months, okay? So if I'm right about the printing, they're not even going to start doing it until late 2026. They're going to be late and reluctant to do it, okay? They're not going to see true outright QE in large numbers significant enough to actually start to push inflation higher until probably early 2027, okay? And early 2027, when they really spool those printers up, really do outright QE, Fed balance sheet expansion to the tune of multiple trillions, right? Significantly more than what we saw in the C19 era. By the time we get there, we're still going to be 12 to 18 months because of the lag before it actually shows up in the CPI print. And then it's going to take months and months and months to actually tick up. And by then, the shape of the fractal is going to look absolutely nothing like this, right? Nothing like this at all. So again, it's not really about being right or wrong. It's just about positioning for the market, right? I do not want to be positioned for a resumption of inflation, which realistically is not even on the table for many, many years to come. And again, as always, there's a hard invalidation, right? We start to actually put in a bottom here, make higher highs and higher lows, then we're completely wrong about this, and we can adjust to that and start to position more for a debasement trade. But right now, it's just silly to even say this is on the table. Moving into the world of Bitcoin, altcoins, and then a quick bit of silver, lots of people have been questioning the cycle system for Bitcoin alone, okay? No one's had a problem with it in other asset classes, but a lot of people have said, well, Bitcoin's been a bit of a problem child, and to some degree it has, right? But I have maintained Bitcoin is throwing cycles within the tolerance of the cycle system, right? There's nothing actually outside of the ordinary. I've seen people say cycles have been broken this cycle, and that's absolutely not true at all. And in fact, there's a very, very nice visualization of just how consistent Bitcoin cycle has been, even though it doesn't feel like that necessarily, right? This visual here shows that every single one of these lows has occurred within 10 days of the start of the month, okay? So what does that tell you? Well, that makes perfect sense because we've got a 60-day cycle, which is essentially 2 months, okay? Broken up by a half cycle low every 30 sort of days, right? So we go cycle low, half cycle low, cycle low, half cycle low, cycle low, half cycle low. And you can see that these are actually incredibly consistent. So even though it may not feel like it, and even though there have been lots of kind of fake out failed cycles along the way and this kind of thing, the reality is the rhythm of the market is still absolutely within tolerance of the cycle system. We've got Crypto Burb here saying that we might just have 40 days left of this cycle, and never say never, right? It could be the case. I actually think we've got a little bit longer than that, but time will tell. I prefer this kind of look here, which is that we're in the process now of finding the final swing low. Okay, here it was before the run to the top, here it was before the run to the top, and here it was again before that run to the top. So I think what we're doing here is about to find that final low. It may already be in, and then we're going to begin our ascent to the final high. And again, I do still maintain it's going to look something like this, right? And top sometime before the end of this year. I do not believe there's no more 4-year cycles. I don't believe in the Q1 or Q2 top. I don't believe in the up-only narrative forever. But as ever, we'll keep taking this thing one day at a time. I am still, though, operating with the assumption that somewhere in this little window over the next couple of months is where we're going to have to see the top come in for Bitcoin. Another very similar look here, okay? We are entering, historically speaking, the part of the 4-year cycle where we could moon past 200k before the end of this year. Seems kind of crazy, I know. It seems hard to believe. But if it does do a 100% move from here, that would just be exactly what it did every other cycle, right? In fact, every other cycle it's done at least 100% from this moment, right? And in the earlier cycles, it did way more than 100% upside here. So I know a lot of people have counted this out, and that's fine. In fact, there's one guy that comments on every single one of my videos every single day to say exactly the same thing. And that thing is Bitcoin cannot go above 160k. I'm not really sure why he feels the need to comment that on every single video, but as ever, I'm grateful for people boosting the algorithm with their comments. It seems like a pretty weird thing to be locked on to. And you certainly can't say it can't go above 160k. Nobody knows, right? That's the absolute truth. Maybe it doesn't, maybe it doesn't. Who really can say? But I do think that kind of comment is representative of the sentiment. I don't think that many people truly believe this thing could make it well above the 200k mark. So we'll find out, right? We will find out for sure. I think a lot of people have kind of got this diminishing cycles idea in their head, and therefore they just assume that there's no possible way Bitcoin could move past 200k this cycle. I think a lot of people have got PTSD from the 21 cycle, where in here, every man and his dog was calling for 200, 300, 400k, and instead we got a hard Fed pivot, QT, in a bear market. And I think a lot of people were kind of thinking, I really don't want to call for higher numbers again in case we get a repeat of this. So I don't know. All I know is I don't know. That's the only thing I know. And we'll continue to take this thing a day at a time as always. For altcoins, check this out, okay? We've got the move above the 75 threshold for Altseason here. And I think it's pretty interesting that people are saying, it's Altseason, but your alts still haven't moved. The hard truth is they might never. His words, not mine, okay? This market has changed, capital is selective, and the attention is limited. Seeing other similar kind of sentiment around this kind of Altseason index, right? People are saying this is BS. But I did think it was interesting, right? People have spent this entire cycle telling me my no broad-based Altseason idea was dumb, and oftentimes people were quite toxic about it, right? But currently, that's exactly what we've got. we have got Altseason on extraordinarily thin breadth. And suddenly, many seem annoyed with the lack of participation. Now, objectively speaking, it is still early. Okay, we could quite easily see the top 5, 7, 10, whatever the number is, rotate into the smaller caps, and we could easily see breadth widen out. But so far, my idea that a handful will do extremely well and most will not continues to be correct. And we do indeed have a Mag 7 effect continuing to be observed in the altcoin market, right? We've got, just like the Mag 7 stocks drag up the likes of the US majors, the indices, and under the hood, very few stocks are actually participating in the rally. It seems we've got the exact same thing, right? We've got the likes of the altcoin indices being dragged higher or breaking out seemingly, but under the hood, it's just a handful of alts carrying the entire index on their back. So the real question, I suppose, is does the breadth widen, right? And again, it is still quite early in the cycle, I think. If I'm right about Bitcoin, and Bitcoin's got a good few months, where's those charts, right? Like in this kind of thing. If we've got something like this on the table for Bitcoin, then it seems entirely reasonable to me, if there's going to be a real alt season, we could get here and then see big rotation out of Bitcoin into alts for a couple of months, okay? And that's how you see the kind of Mag 7 alts rotate into the smaller caps. So I don't think we can discount the idea that alt season's coming, right? I'm not ready to say, yeah, okay, that was another right call. I'm not ready to say that by any stretch of the imagination. I'm just saying so far, breadth continues to be narrow, and that was the call. So we'll keep tracking it. As ever, I don't have a dog in the fight. I would rather be wrong about this because it's not going to cost me anything to be wrong, and everyone else gets to make a bunch of money in their altcoins. I just, for now, continue to stand with the idea that there will be thin breadth or narrow participation, and only a handful of these alts will do well. I know someone's going to mention this, and that's if you use this same thing on a yearly time frame. Apparently what you get is that alt season hasn't even started yet, so I don't know how to interpret that. Does that mean that this is coming, or can it just do something more like this? I don't know, right? I genuinely have no idea. One thing we do know is that the last time the Fed cut rates in September of 2024, alts pumped about 100% in a couple of months, right? So here's the last Fed cut, and this is the crypto total market cap, excluding Bitcoin and ETH. So if we're about to cut rates, which we know we're about to see a 25 basis point cut, does that set us up for a big push to the upside? Just before we hop into a couple of charts, is there any chance silver can reach $75 this year? And the answer is yeah, I think this is absolutely on the table. Now, I've always kind of said 75 was a little bit too high. I think anywhere between 50 and 60 will be, for me, like pretty happy days. I'm going to start unwinding the physical stack anywhere between $50 and $60. But could it make 75? I don't think this is beyond the realm of expectation. I do, however, continue to stand with my original call, which is that whether it's $50, $60, or $75, silver is going to do something like this and give back pretty much all of its gains. Okay, that's what I'm expecting, and I expect to be a big buyer down here somewhere between, I don't know, 20 and 25 bucks out of those major cycle lows in 2026. But people were sleeping on this for a long time. People had kind of given up on this market, but I do think that we're probably only a few candles away now, a few monthly candles at the most, and probably more like a few weekly candles away from seeing that final parabolic move into a top. And so, of course, not a great deal has changed in terms of the charts since the weekend's deep dive video on Saturday. Bitcoin's still hanging around, can't really make any new conclusions from that. Oil, as I kind of covered earlier on, okay, look, still trending down since the top call, isn't it? So, I mean, nothing remotely similar to the 70s fractal. I guess while we're here, we can have a quick look at Ethereum and XRP. Ethereum, no real changes. XRP, no real changes either by the look of it. So we'll see if it's going to do this, or I wouldn't be surprised if it has to do this, actually. But we'll find out, right? We'll find out. If you've got the indicator works extraordinarily well on this asset, which is weird because we didn't at all fine tune it for XRP, but it does work extremely well on this asset. So if anyone's got it, might as well use it to find you some tradable lows there. And that's it, right? I don't really think there's anything else to say apart from we've got a slightly updated count for the S&P. We're looking for a low around the 29th of September. So just keep an eye out, because after FOMC, probably a decline into a cycle lows coming, and then probably another opportunity to add. I also think that's going to be the weekly cycle low, as the members are fully familiarized with. And other than that, keep an eye on gold, because it's probably going to be time to take some profits sooner rather than later. I'm your boy Camel. Have a fantastic rest of the week. I'll be back tomorrow as always. And until then, take care from me. All the best. Cheers. Bye.
Camel Finance, he's the man to see. Rocking the markets with his contrarian spree. Trades like a pro, no fear, no shame. Sticking to his guns in his money game. He's a badass, oh yes indeed. Camel